Maybe this is the most uncomfortable sentence you'll hear today, not because it's offensive, but because it reveals something you've already felt deep down. That feeling that you work, run, push yourself, try in every possible way to make life move, yet somehow, you always end up stuck in the same place. It's like being in an endless race toward a finish line that never arrives. And no matter how hard you try, something inside you pulls you back to the same spot, the same difficulties, the same fears, the same lifestyle you've promised yourself 1,000 times you would overcome. But you never do. And here's the painful part. It's not because you don't try. It's because you think small, limited, conditioned, and you don't even notice. Poverty begins long before it shows up in your bank account. It begins in the mind, silently while you live, believing you're doing your best. You grew up hearing things like money doesn't bring happiness. It's better to have a secure job. Who wants too much ends up with nothing. If you're born poor, you die poor. These phrases sound harmless, like advice, like common wisdom, but they're not. They're seeds. Seeds of limitation, fear, and conformity. Seeds you planted before you even knew you were accepting a small life. And now as an adult, you're harvesting what you planted. Anxiety about money, fear of risk, a sense of scarcity, terror of losing the little you have. You think like someone poor because they taught you to survive, not to grow, to protect yourself, not to expand, to accept, not to question, to settle for crumbs, not to build abundance. And the worst part is that you don't even notice when you repeat this pattern. It becomes automatic, invisible, natural. You keep saying you want to change your life, but deep down, you fear change more than poverty. You want to earn more, but you're afraid of looking ambitious. You want to grow, but you're afraid of failing. You want something bigger, but you keep acting like someone who's used to having little, and it's not your fault, it's conditioning. You learned to use small words, dream small dreams, expect small outcomes. And when the universe places something big in front of you, your mind rejects it, retreats, sabotages it. A poor mind doesn't just think about money. A poor mind thinks it doesn't deserve. And when you believe you don't deserve, you become your own obstacle. Maybe you've felt this silent pain. Life isn't moving, nothing flows, everything is exhausting. Every achievement feels like a sacrifice. Every step feels heavy. And inside you there is a voice repeating non-stop, this isn't for you. It's going to fail. Don't risk it. Better stay quiet. Better not get involved. Better wait a little longer. This voice is not protection, it's prison. It's the mentality that keeps you small while your soul is begging to expand. And you feel it. You feel you were born for more. You feel there is something greater inside you. You feel you're wasting a potential you can't even explain. But fear freezes you, conditioning suffocates you, and you return to the pattern you know. Because humans fear the new even when the new is the life they want. The poverty mindset takes many forms. It appears when you save money out of fear, but never invest with strategy. When you work to survive, but never to build. When you chase security before purpose. When you accept little because you're afraid of losing everything. When you think you have to prove your worth to deserve the basics. When you think wealth is a privilege, not a consequence. When you complain about what life gives you, but never change what's happening inside you. And perhaps the cruelest part, you don't notice when you're sabotaging yourself. You think you're protecting yourself, when in reality you're limiting yourself. You think you're being cautious, when you're actually hiding. You think you're being responsible, when you're just repeating the fear you were taught. A poor mind lives in scarcity. Scarcity of money, scarcity of time, scarcity of opportunities, scarcity of confidence, scarcity of faith. It's the mentality that makes you accept crumbs in relationships, crumbs in work, crumbs emotionally. It's the mentality that makes you believe that people like you don't go far, don't grow, don't succeed. It's the mentality that makes you give up before trying, doubt before acting, retreat before growing. It's the mentality that turns you into a spectator of your own life while you watch others live what you only dare to imagine. But it's not reality limiting you. It's your lens, your mind. And here's where everything changes. Life doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. You don't attract what you desire. You attract what you believe you deserve. This is brutal. This is liberating because it means everything begins inside. Your external world is nothing but a reflection of your internal structure. If inside there is fear, your life will be small. If inside there is scarcity, your life will be limited. If inside there is doubt, your life will be confused. But if inside there is courage, your life expands. If inside there is clarity, your life flows. If inside there is awareness, your life changes. You think like someone poor without noticing because you're stuck in survival mode. And survival mode wasn't made to build a future, it was only made to avoid dying. And while you think only about the next bill, the next paycheck, the next due date, you never think big enough to break the cycle. You keep putting out fires instead of building direction. And while you live on autopilot, your mind keeps shrinking, 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 until it fits inside the fear you were taught to carry. The truth is, no one taught you how to prosper. No one taught you how to handle money. No one taught you how to think big. No one taught you how to dare. No one taught you how to expand. You grew up learning to fit in, not to stand out, to adapt, not to evolve, to obey, not to create, to follow rules, not to build your own. And now, as an adult, you try to prosper using a mind that only learned to survive. But there is something inside you that refuses to settle. And this restlessness you feel, this discomfort, this urgency, this sensation that life has become too small for who you are is not failure. It's a calling. It's your consciousness telling you that you're living below your potential. It's your future knocking at the door. It's your new version asking to come in. And as long as you think like someone poor, you'll keep hiding from that calling. But if you change your mind, everything changes. Because real change isn't about money, it's about identity. It's not about how much you earn, it's about who you become. Life begins to flow when you stop acting like someone who is just trying to survive and start acting like someone who was born to expand. And that transition is painful, because it hurts to abandon old beliefs. It hurts to take responsibility. It hurts to admit that you limited yourself. But it's this pain that transforms you. You think like someone poor when you believe the world owes you something, when you wait for someone to save you, when you blame circumstances, when you blame the lack of opportunity, when you blame the lack of time, when you blame your past. All of this keeps you stuck, because while you blame something external, you give away your internal power. The poor live blaming, the rich live assuming, the poor live reacting, the rich live choosing, the poor live asking, the rich live building, the poor live waiting, the rich live creating. And notice, rich here has nothing to do with money. It's about mindset, posture, identity. There are millionaires with a poor mind and simple people with a rich mind. The difference is how they think. A poor mind sees risk. A rich mind sees possibility. A poor mind sees scarcity. A rich mind sees expansion. A poor mind sees difficulty. A rich mind sees direction. A poor mind sees problems. A rich mind sees solutions. A poor mind sees fear. A rich mind sees movement. A poor mind lives to protect. A rich mind lives to build. And when you change the way you think, your life changes as a consequence. It's not magic. It's identity. You don't have to be rich to think like someone rich, but you will never be rich while thinking like someone poor. And maybe the question you need to ask yourself right now is, what, exactly, inside me still thinks like someone poor? Where inside me does scarcity still live? Where inside me is there still fear? Where inside me is there still blockage? Where am I still sabotaging myself? Where am I still abandoning myself? The answer hurts, but it frees you, because deep down you know you hide from your potential. You know you shrink yourself. You know you sabotage yourself. You know you settle for little. You know you hold yourself back. You know you always find an excuse not to start. You know you could be much further if you stopped thinking small. You know you fear failure, but also fear success. You know you don't see yourself as capable. You know you don't see yourself as worthy. You know you've lost years trying to survive when you could have been building. You know, but you never admitted it until now. The shift begins when you admit the truth. Your life doesn't change because you keep thinking like someone who doesn't believe in themselves. Like someone who thinks they don't deserve, like someone who expects less than what they could receive. And as long as your mind stays small, your life will stay small. But when your mind expands, your life follows. Always the healing isn't in earning more money. It's in changing your mindset about it. It's in changing the way you see value. It's in changing the way you see yourself. When you decide to stop thinking like someone poor, something inside you awakens. You start moving differently, acting differently, speaking differently, deciding differently, choosing differently, and the world responds. And maybe, at this very moment, as you hear these words, you're realizing that what holds you back is not the lack of opportunity, it's the lack of awareness, not the lack of money, the lack of mindset. It's not the world limiting you, it's you repeating the version you were taught to be. And that is liberating, because it means you can change everything. Change starts when you stop hiding behind fear, when you stop looking for excuses, when you stop repeating patterns, when you stop accepting crumbs, when you stop seeing yourself as a victim of life, when you decide that your mind is the starting point of everything, and when you do that, life finally begins to flow. If this video spoke to you, write in the comments, "I choose to think big." This marks the beginning of your real turning point. Like, share, and subscribe. Here you'll find daily words that expand your mind and change your life. Because everything changes when you change. See you in the next video.